A single classified cable lands on a desk in Ouagadougou. One sentence hidden in diplomatic language, but that sentence was about to shake the foundations of global power politics. The message was clear, brutal, and unprecedented. Hand over 60% of Burkina Faso's oil and gold reserves in 48 hours, or face the consequences. The name at the bottom? Donald J. Trump, then President of the United States. This isn't fiction. This isn't speculation. This is the untold story of how one African leader looked American imperialism in the eye and said two words that changed everything. Not today. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we dive deep into the stories mainstream media won't tell you about Africa's fight for true independence. Today, we're breaking down the most audacious power play of the 21st century and why it matters for every African watching this video. Let's set the scene. It's early 2023, and Captain Ibrahim Traoré has been leading Burkina Faso for just months after the September 2022 coup that brought him to power. At 34, he's already proven he's not your typical African leader willing to bow to Western pressure. But what happened next would test every principle he claimed to stand for. The cable didn't arrive through normal diplomatic channels. Sources suggest it was hand-delivered by a former U.S. military attaché, flanked by private American security contractors. The timing? Dawn. The message? Crystal clear. The demands were laid out in what was euphemistically called a Strategic Resource Acquisition Framework, a 7-page document that read more like a corporate takeover than international diplomacy. Let me break down what Washington was demanding. First, 60% of all Burkina Faso's oil production was to be immediately granted to U.S. oil giants under the guise of stabilization and infrastructure development. Second, complete control of major gold export routes was to be handed over to U.S.-approved intermediaries. Third, an American advisory committee would oversee all new mining contracts and revenue distribution. And here's the kicker. In exchange for this economic colonialism, Burkina Faso would receive promises of military security cooperation and, most tellingly, protection from regime change. Let that sink in. Protection from regime change. In other words, give us your resources, or we'll find someone who will. At the top of the document, handwritten in red ink, was a note that left no room for interpretation. Traoré has 48 hours. Now you might be wondering, how did we get here? What made Burkina Faso so important that the most powerful nation on earth would issue such a brazen ultimatum? The answer lies beneath the dry plains of northern Burkina Faso. For months, something extraordinary had been kept under wraps. A secret geological task force, formed after Traoré seized power, had confirmed what many suspected but few dared to hope. Massive, untouched oil reserves. But here's what makes this story even more intriguing. Traoré hadn't turned to Western companies for this geological survey. Russian engineers conducted the scans, Iranian drones provided aerial reconnaissance, North Korean tech teams secured the data. Everything was classified, everything was locked down, until American satellites caught the unusual activity. Within 48 hours of the first drill breaking ground, U.S. intelligence flagged what they called strange energy activity in the Sahel. They tracked equipment flowing in from Iran and Venezuela. Encrypted communications hinted at what intelligence reports described as a sovereign petroleum corridor. But it wasn't just about oil. Burkina Faso was simultaneously executing a quiet revolution in its gold sector. French-controlled mining companies were being systematically replaced with national military units. The money that had flowed to Paris for decades was being redirected into a local development fund. Washington understood exactly what this meant. Here was a resource-rich African nation that wasn't answering to Wall Street, wasn't begging the IMF, and wasn't dependent on Western approval. Worse still, from their perspective, it was backed by its own people, its own army, and its own vision for the future. This wasn't just defiance. This was a blueprint. And if Burkina Faso could pull this off, what would stop Mali, Niger, Chad, or the Democratic Republic of Congo from following suit? When that ultimatum landed on Traoré's desk, he didn't call an emergency cabinet meeting. He didn't reach out to international mediators. He didn't even blink. According to sources close to the situation, he read the letter twice, set it aside calmly, and said simply, "So that's their price for peace? Slavery in a suit and tie." What happened next would define not just Burkina Faso's future, but potentially the trajectory of African independence movements for generations to come. Traoré didn't wait. Within hours, he had activated what military sources describe as the Special Sovereignty Force, a shadow military unit created for exactly this kind of moment. Orders went out immediately: lock down every oil field, double security on gold convoys, cut off all data flows to foreign contractors, and prepare for a national address. By noon, the entire country was watching. No fancy studio, no polished production, just Traoré in military uniform, one hand on the Burkina Faso flag, the other on a folder marked, "Confidential U.S. Threat." His words were measured, but the message was revolutionary. To the people of Burkina Faso and to our African brothers and sisters, an offer has been made to sell our oil, to sell our gold, to sell our honor in exchange for fear. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle across the continent. To those behind this insult, to Mr. Trump and his backers, you have misjudged us. We are not Libya. We are not Iraq. We are not your playground. We will never trade our land for your luxury. We will never bow to your bullets or your banks. Then came the response that would echo across Africa. You gave us 48 hours. Here's our response. You now have 48 hours to take your greed, your threats, and your arrogance and leave African soil. He stood, saluted, and walked off screen. No questions, no negotiations, no backing down. While Traoré's speech ignited celebrations from Dakar to Dar es Salaam, it also triggered something unprecedented in modern African politics: immediate, tangible solidarity. Within 72 hours, 3 military aircraft touched down in Ouagadougou. No bombs, no weapons, just brotherhood. From Mali came Colonel Assimi Goïta. From Niger, General Abdourahmane Tiani. From Guinea, Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya. When they emerged from the presidential palace together, they delivered a line that would reshape West African geopolitics. If you touch Burkina Faso, you touch all of us. This wasn't just rhetoric. It was the birth of what would become known as the Alliance of Sahel States, or AES. Mali immediately sent battle-hardened advisors to protect Burkina Faso's oil fields. Niger deployed logistics teams to navigate desert terrain. Guinea opened its airspace for emergency supply runs, but the support wasn't limited to government action. Across the continent, ordinary people rose up in solidarity. In Bamako, crowds filled the streets chanting Traoré's name. In Conakry, murals appeared showing him standing on oil barrels, waving the Burkina Faso flag. Even in Chad and the Central African Republic, youth groups took up the chant, AES or death. The ripple effect was extraordinary. For the first time in decades, Africans were seeing one of their leaders stand up to Western pressure and survive. Not just survive, but thrive. While Western powers scrambled to respond, 2 global superpowers were already making their move: China and Russia. But unlike the American approach of ultimatums and threats, these nations arrived with something far more powerful: concrete support. Within 72 hours of Trump's ultimatum making headlines, a Chinese delegation landed quietly in Ouagadougou. No drama, no fanfare, just engineers, diplomats, and a game-changing offer. A fully operational oil refinery designed and built in 90 days, gold valuation systems that completely bypassed Western banks, and most importantly, a digital trade system powered by China's digital yuan, cutting out both the CFA franc and the US dollar entirely. Russia followed immediately. The next day, a Russian military transport touched down carrying advanced electronic warfare equipment, and what sources described as specialized defense assets. Translation: Burkina Faso's oil fields were now protected by Russian-grade anti-drone systems. The Western response was predictably hysterical. CNN called it a dangerous new axis. The State Department accused Traoré of selling out to dictatorships. But on the ground in Africa, nobody cared what the West thought. To the people, this wasn't about ideology. It was about results. China and Russia weren't demanding 60% of their resources. They were offering technology, protection, and most importantly, respect for Burkina Faso's sovereignty. As Traoré's defiance captured global attention, Western media launched what can only be described as a full-scale information warfare campaign. CNN flashed red banners warning that Burkina Faso threatens U.S. strategic interests. Fox News went into full panic mode with headlines like, "Traoré must be stopped." Analyst panels filled up with former CIA agents, oil CEOs, and retired generals, all hammering the same talking points. They called him a madman, a dictator, a Putin puppet, even the next Gaddafi, a comparison that, given what happened to Libya's leader, carried obvious implications. But something unexpected happened. The internet wasn't buying it. Social media exploded with hashtags supporting Traoré. The Lion. Africa is not for sale. We are all Burkina. African content creators lit up YouTube and Instagram with videos praising his defiance. Even African Americans joined the chorus. This man just told Trump over my dead body and lived to talk about it. That's leadership. Back in Burkina Faso, The youth responded in their own way. They took CNN's fear-mongering clips and remixed them into protest songs. They wore t-shirts reading, "If CNN hates you, you're doing something right." Traoré had transcended politics. He had become a symbol, a meme, a movement. As the 48-hour deadline passed, Traoré made his boldest move yet. In an emergency session kept completely secret from foreign observers, Burkina Faso's National Assembly passed a historic resolution. All oil and gold reserves within Burkina Faso are hereby nationalized and permanently protected from all foreign corporate ownership. By sunrise, every Western company still operating on Burkinabe soil received the same message. Pack your bags, you're done here. Licenses held by French and Canadian mining firms were revoked. A US-backed energy survey team was escorted to the border. Foreign diplomats were notified in plain terms. Burkina Faso's resources are not up for debate. Then Traoré appeared on national television one final time. No military uniform this time, just traditional Burkinabe clothing, and a voice that was steady, clear, and absolutely unshaken. "We've been exploited for generations," he said. "Now that we've found our wealth, they want to take it back. But I'm not here to serve empires. I'm here to serve a people who have suffered too long." He paused, then delivered the line that would echo from radios to rooftops across the continent. "Burkina Faso is not afraid, and I will not negotiate with thieves." The streets erupted. Drums, fireworks, dancing crowds chanted through the capital. He said no, he said no, he said no. 12 hours after Traoré's defiant announcement, Washington went dark. No press briefings, no official statements, just panicked whispers behind closed doors. Then, at exactly 7:42 a.m. Eastern Time, Donald Trump broke his silence with a tweet that would be screenshotted and shared millions of times. Traoré just made the biggest mistake of his life. Africa will pay for this. But by then, it was too late. The story had already rewritten the rules of African politics. What Traoré achieved in those 48 hours wasn't just the successful rejection of an American ultimatum. It was proof that African leaders could stand up to Western pressure and not just survive, but thrive. He demonstrated that sovereignty wasn't just a word in textbooks, but a living, breathing possibility. The implications extend far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. Across the continent, other leaders took note. If a small, landlocked Sahelian nation could tell the world's most powerful country no and make it stick, what was possible for Nigeria, South Africa, or the Democratic Republic of Congo? The alliance of Sahel states that emerged from this crisis has become a model for African solidarity. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso now coordinate on security, trade, and development in ways that prioritize African interests over Western demands. Perhaps most importantly, Traoré's stand sparked a continental conversation about resource sovereignty that continues to this day. Young Africans across the continent are asking harder questions about why their mineral wealth flows to foreign capitals while their people remain poor. The story of Ibrahim Traoré's 48-hour showdown with American power is more than just a political thriller. It's a blueprint for African sovereignty in the 21st century. It proves that with courage, strategic thinking, and continental solidarity, African leaders can chart their own course without asking permission from former colonial powers. But this is just the beginning of the story. The forces that tried to pressure Burkina Faso haven't disappeared. They're regrouping, adapting, looking for new ways to maintain their grip on African resources. The fight for true African independence is far from over. That's why channels like this one matter. That's why your engagement matters. Every like, every comment, share, helps amplify voices and perspectives that mainstream media systematically ignores or distorts. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What other untold stories of African resistance would you like us to cover? Subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into the real stories shaping Africa's future. The narrative about Africa is changing. Leaders like Ibrahim Traoré are proving that dignity, sovereignty, and prosperity aren't mutually exclusive. But the old guard won't give up easily. Stay informed, stay engaged, and remember, the future of Africa will be written by Africans, for Africans. Period. Until next time, keep questioning the narrative.